Rain lashed against Tom Harper's tin roof like gunfire. The old veteran barely glanced up from his whiskey until a sound cut through the thunder. Not wind, not branches. A cry, high-pitched, desperate. Tom's calloused hands froze around his glass. 30 years alone in these mountains, he knew every sound these woods made. This was different. Lightning flashed, illuminating the porch where a drenched bundle of fur trembled. A bobcat cub, barely weaned, its golden eyes wide with terror. Tom's breath caught. That cub shouldn't be alone. Where was its mother? Another whimper, another crack of thunder, and against every instinct, Tom found himself reaching for his coat. The cub shrank back as Tom approached, its tiny body racked with shivers. "Easy there," Tom murmured, voice rough from disuse. He could see its ribs through soaked fur. Starving, freezing, alone, just like he'd been in '68, pinned down in that rice paddy waiting to die. The cub hissed weakly when he reached out, all baby teeth and bravado. Tom chuckled darkly. "Stubborn little devil, ain't you?" A gust of wind howled through the pines. The cub flinched, then did something that stopped Tom's heart. It stumbled forward and collapsed against his boot. That tiny, trusting weight against his leather. Hell, he couldn't leave it now. By the firelight, the cub looked worse. Its breathing came shallow and quick. Tom wrapped it in his last clean towel, feeling absurdly gentle. "Come on, fighter," he growled, dripping warm milk onto its tongue. Nothing. The cub's eyes stayed closed. Tom's throat tightened. He'd seen this before, that fragile line between living and dying. His fingers brushed the cub's chest, searching for a heartbeat. 1 second. 2. Then the faintest flutter. The cub's pink tongue flicked out, tasting the milk. Tom exhaled hard. "That's it, Scout," he muttered, not realizing he'd named it. "You show death who's boss." Dawn found Tom Harper wide awake, his stiff fingers still stroking Scout's fur. The cub slept curled in his hat, belly full for the first time in days. Tom studied those black-tipped ears, the white patches on its paws, every detail perfect, wild. He should take it to the rangers. Shouldn't get attached. But when Scout's eyes blinked open, that impossible blue-gold gaze locking onto his, Tom felt something shift in his chest. The cub stretched, tiny claws pricking his palm, then butted its head against his wrist. A purr rumbled through its small frame. Tom swallowed hard. Damned if that sound didn't undo 30 years of solitude in a heartbeat. By week's end, Scout followed Tom everywhere, tripping over its own paws down the porch steps, pouncing on shadows, yowling when dinner was late. The old vet pretended annoyance. "Ain't no house cat," he'd grumble, even as he carved Scout a wooden toy mouse. At night, the cub slept draped across Tom's boots like a living fur stole. That's where Marlene Jenkins found them one morning, the town's toughest recluse, whispering to a bobcat as it gnawed his bootlaces. "Well, I'll be," she breathed. Tom scowled. "Don't start." But when Scout leapt into his arms, nuzzling his beard, even Marlene saw it. The cracks in Tom Harper's armor were growing by the day. Tom told himself it was temporary. Just until Scout could hunt, he'd release it. Had to. But when he tried leaving Scout in the woods with fresh-killed rabbit, the cub did something extraordinary. It ignored the meal. Instead, it scrambled after Tom, chirping that strange bobcat greeting cry. When Tom kept walking, Scout raced ahead and blocked his path, small chest heaving, eyes blazing. The message was clear: "You're my family now." Tom's knees popped as he crouched to eye level. "You're a damn fool," he whispered. But when Scout headbutted his cheek, Tom Harper, who hadn't hugged another living soul since Vietnam, found himself cradling a wildcat like a baby. Word spread fast in the valley. "You hear? Tom Harper's raising a bobcat." Folks came by on false pretenses, needing sugar, asking about the weather, just to glimpse the pair. They'd find Tom splitting wood with Scout perched on the stump, or the cub helping weed the garden by chewing dandelions. The old vet played gruff, but everyone saw how he'd pause work to scratch Scout's favorite spot behind the ears, how his voice softened when he said, "Come on, little Scout, supper time." How the wariness in his eyes had faded, replaced by something no one thought they'd see again. Joy. Pure, simple, and wild as the creature that brought it. "Wild animals ain't pets," warned the game warden when he came calling. Tom stood stiff on his porch, Scout peering from behind his legs. "She's free to go any time," Tom lied. As if on cue, Scout leapt onto his shoulder, nuzzling his grizzled cheek. The warden sighed. "That cat's imprinted on you, Harper." Tom stroked Scout's back, feeling her purr vibrate through his bones. He knew what came next. Permits, inspections, maybe confiscation. His jaw set. Over his dead body. That night, Tom built a hidden den under the porch, just in case. Scout watched curiously, then brought him a gift, a mangled pine cone. Tom's laughter startled them both. Yeah, good hunting, Scout." The fever hit fast. One evening, Scout was chasing fireflies. By midnight, she lay listless in Tom's arms, her little body burning up. The old vet rocked her like a child, whispering hoarse promises. "You listen here. We didn't come this far for you to quit." He tried every remedy he knew. Honey for strength, cool cloths for the fever. Nothing helped. Scout's breathing grew shallow. Her blue-gold eyes clouded. Tom's hands shook as he reached for his keys. The nearest animal hospital was 2 hours away. Roads were washed out from the storm. Didn't matter. He wrapped Scout in his flannel and ran for the truck. The old soldier was retreating, but for the first time in his life, it was to save something instead of destroy it. The vet's office smelled of antiseptic and hopelessness. "Feline distemper," she said grimly. "At this age, survival rate's low." Tom clutched Scout closer, feeling her weak heartbeat against his chest. The vet eyed his ragged appearance, then sighed. "I'll give her fluids, but—" Tom interrupted. "Do it!" He slapped a wad of cash on the counter, his entire Social Security check. The vet hesitated. "She'll never be wild again, you know." Tom stroked Scout's ears as the IV needle went in. "Wasn't ever gonna be," he admitted softly. Because somewhere between that first storm and tonight, Tom Harper had made a choice. This bobcat wasn't just some animal. She was family. And family you fight for. 3 days after the vet visit, Scout still wouldn't touch food. Tom sat cross-legged on the cabin floor, desperation clawing at his throat. He'd tried raw rabbit, chicken broth, even cat food from Marlene's pantry. Nothing worked. Scout just lay listless in her nest of blankets, her ribs protruding. Then, inspiration struck. Tom rummaged through his footlocker and pulled out a tin of Vietnam-era condensed milk. "Ain't proper," he muttered, mixing it with warm water. The second the scent hit the air, Scout's ears twitched. She dragged herself forward, lapping at the spoon like it was salvation. Tom's vision blurred. "That's it, little soldier," he whispered. Outside, the Ford F-100 sat ready, just in case she took a turn for the worse. Marlene peered over Tom's shoulder as he carved letters into a scrap of barnwood. "Scout? Like To Kill a Mockingbird?" Tom scowled. "Like recon. This cub's got eyes sharper'n any sniper I knew." He nailed the sign above the porch, ignoring how his hands shook. Scout watched from her perch on the Ford's sun-faded hood, tail flicking. Later, when Tom found her pawing at the nameplate, he crouched low. "You don't like it?" Scout headbutted his knee, then bounded off toward the truck. Tom chuckled. Yeah, we'll go for a ride. For a man who'd spent decades avoiding attachments, the realization hit hard. He'd named her. That made her his. Tom let Scout explore the overgrown pasture behind the cabin, his boots crunching on frost-stiffened grass. The cub pounced at shadows, her strength returning. Then, a guttural growl. Tom's spine went rigid. 20 yards away, a mangy coyote bared yellowed teeth. Scout froze. Instinct took over. Tom yanked his .22 from its holster and fired a warning shot. The coyote fled. Scout bolted straight up Tom's leg, clinging to his chest like a terrified kitten. He held her close, her heartbeat hammering against his. "Ain't nothing gonna hurt you," he promised. That night, she slept curled in his lap as he oiled his rifle by lantern light. The fort outside gleamed under the moon. Their escape pod of danger returned. A black and green patrol truck pulled up, spitting gravel. The game warden eyed Scout sunning herself on the Ford's roof. "Harper, you know the law." Tom leaned against the truck's fender, arms crossed. "She's rescue, ain't stand forever." The warden gestured to Scout, batting at a dangling pine branch. "That's a wild animal imprinting. She'll never survive out there now." Scout chose that moment to leap onto Tom's shoulders, purring like a chainsaw. The warden sighed. 30 days, then we reevaluate." As the truck left, Tom stroked Scout's ears. "Reevaluate this," he muttered. The Ford's engine roared to life, just for show, but Tom's mind raced. Where could they go if they had to run? The county commissioner arrived next, clipboard in hand. "We've had complaints, Harper." Behind him, 2 deputies shifted nervously. Scout hissed from the Ford's open window. Tom didn't budge from his porch step. "Y'all best turn around." The commissioner smirked. "Or what, you'll shoot us?" Tom's smile was ice. "Nope, but she might." A thump sounded from the truck bed where Scout had somehow dragged a 3-foot rattlesnake carcass. The deputies paled. "That's impossible for a cub her size," one whispered. Tom spat tobacco juice into the dirt. "Ain't my fault y'all don't know nature." As the men retreated, Scout pranced to Tom's side, her tail high. The old vet exhaled. They'd won to bay, but the war? It was just beginning. Tom tossed a live mouse into the tall grass. "Go on, Scout, earn your keep." The cub crouched, wiggled her hindquarters, and face-planted into a thistle. The mouse escaped. Scout yowled in frustration. "Christ on a cracker," Tom groaned, plucking thorns from her paws. That night, over venison stew, he had an idea. Next morning, he revved the Ford's engine and drove slow circles in the pasture, dragging a rabbit pelt on a rope. Scout gave chase, her instincts firing. By dusk, she'd killed the pelt 6 times. Tom grinned as she dragged her prize onto the truck's bench seat. "All right, killer, let's get you a real hunt tomorrow." The way her eyes gleamed in the dashboard light, that was the look of a predator born. Tom woke to whining. Not Scout's usual feed-me cry. This was raw terror. He bolted outside in his long johns, flashlight beam cutting through the mist. There, wedged under the Ford's bumper, Scout, her back leg trapped in the rusted tailpipe guard. Tom wrenched the metal free. Blood welled on her thigh. "Goddamn junk heap!" he cursed the truck, carrying her inside. As he cleaned the wound, Scout didn't fight, just stared at him with absolute trust. Tom's hands shook. This was why he never wanted to care. One mistake, and... His thoughts shattered when Scout licked his wrist. The message was clear. You fixed it. That night, Tom slept in the rocking chair beside her nest, one hand resting on her flank. The Ford sat abandoned in the yard, its doors still hanging open. The infection came fast. By dawn, Scout's leg was swollen, hot to the touch. Tom loaded her into the Ford, foot heavy on the gas. The old truck protested, its suspension bottoming out on back road potholes. Scout panted in the passenger seat, her head in his lap. "Stay with me, girl," he begged, voice cracking. Somewhere near mile marker 17, it happened. A wet drop hit Scout's fur. Then another. Not rain. Tom Harper was crying, real heaving sobs that made his ribs ache. Scout nuzzled his trembling hand. The truck's cracked vinyl seats bore witness to something no living soul had seen. The day Tom Harper learned love hurts worse than shrapnel. 2 weeks later, Scout brought Tom her first real kill, a mangled field mouse deposited proudly on his boot. Tom pretended disgust. "Hell's bells, Scout, that's disgusting!" The cub chirped, tail high. That night, as Tom changed the Ford's oil, she dragged something from under the porch, a dented army medal from his footlocker, his bronze star. Tom froze. Scout dropped it at his feet, then rolled onto her back in invitation. Tom's throat closed. In war, medals meant you'd survived hell. This meant he'd finally come home. He scratched her belly until she purred, the metal gleaming between them on the garage floor. Folks at the feed store whispered when Tom walked in. "Ain't natural," muttered old man Pritchard. "Wildcats don't act like that." Tom ignored them, loading bags into the Ford's bed. But when he turned, there was Scout, sitting shotgun like she owned the damn truck. Gasps erupted. Scout yawned, showing off her teeth. Tom smirked. "Y'all act like you never seen a co-pilot before." As the Ford rumbled to life, Scout pawed at the AM radio until country music crackled through. Tom's laugh echoed down Main Street. Let him talk. He knew the truth. Some bonds defied nature. And this one, it was just getting started. The game warden's truck rolled up with a county sheriff in tow. Tom stood in front of the Ford, arms crossed, Scout growling low in the cab behind him. The sheriff spat tobacco. "Harper, we got a court order. That Bobcat's going to a sanctuary today." Tom's knuckles whitened on his rifle strap. "Over my dead body." The warden sighed. "It's this or felony charges, Tom." Scout let out a piercing cry and sliced the Ford's upholstery with her claws, a warning. Tom's voice dropped to a whisper. "You touch her, you'll need more'n badges." The engines roared as both trucks peeled out, but the threat hung heavier than the Ford's exhaust. Tom fried up a whole rabbit in bacon grease, Scout's favorite. She devoured it at the picnic table, grease shining on her whiskers. Tom didn't eat, just watched her, memorizing the way her ears twitched at jays in the pines. When she finished, she nosed his untouched plate. "All yours, kiddo," he rasped. Scout hopped into his lap, purring like a diesel engine. Tom buried his face in her fur. The Ford sat loaded with supplies. A tarp, rope, 2 gas cans. Midnight, he decided. They'd disappear into the national forest. No permits, no laws. Just them and the wild, where she belonged. Deep in the woods, Tom unleashed Scout near a fresh deer carcass. "Go on, like we practiced." The cubs stalked the scent, then froze. A real predator was here first. A mountain lion's growl rumbled through the trees. Tom's .22 was up in a flash, but Scout surprised them both. She hissed, arched her back, and stood her ground like she'd been wild-born. The lion retreated. Tom's chest swelled. Atta girl. But that night, Scout shivered by the campfire, pressing close. The truth was plain. She could fight, but she didn't want the wild. Not without him. Scout dragged the grouse to Tom's boots at dawn, its neck neatly broken. No play, no mistakes. A clean kill. Tom knelt, inspecting her work. "Damn fine huntin'." Scout chirped, tail high, then promptly stole his bacon. Tom laughed so hard he choked. But as he watched her gnaw the greasy strip, reality set in.
She was ready. The Ford's cab grew quiet on the drive home, Scout snoozing with her head on his thigh. Tom white-knuckled the wheel. How do you say goodbye to something that saved your soul?
Tom oiled his boots by lamplight. Scout gnawed a deer antler, pausing every few minutes to stare at him. Outside, the Ford sat packed with gear for her new life. A GPS collar, a road-killed deer in the bed. Tom's Vietnam dog tags glinted on the table. He'd tied them to Scout's collar with paracord. "So you remember me," he muttered. Scout dropped the antler and climbed into his lap, licking his stubble. Tom held her tight. Somewhere an owl hooted. Neither of them slept a wink. Tom drove the Ford to a remote ridge at sunrise. Scout sat alert in the passenger seat, ears forward. When he opened the door, she didn't move. "Go on," he urged, voice thick. Scout hesitated, then leapt out, but stopped 10 feet away. Tom revved the engine, needing her to run. Instead, she turned and locked eyes with him, her blue-gold gaze piercing. Then she chirped, the same sound she'd made that first stormy night. Tom's vision blurred. "God damn it, go!" Scout vanished into the brush. The Ford's cab echoed with one broken sob before Tom slammed it into gear. Tom's cabin was tomb-silent. No paws skittering on hardwood, no demanding yowls at dawn, just Scout's chewed-up toy mouse on the rug. Tom kicked the Ford's tire hard enough to dent it. That night he got drunk on moonshine and threw her leftover venison into the woods. "Shoulda kept you," he slurred to the darkness. A rustle in the bushes made his heart leap, but it was just a damn raccoon. The Ford's keys dangled from his fist. One drive, just to check. He talked himself out of it. Barely. Tom caved on day 17. The Ford bounced down game trails to Scout's release site. Her GPS collar pinged. North. He tracked the signal to a kill site. Feathers, blood, clean brakes. Good girl. Then a tuft of tawny fur on barbed wire. Tom's gut clenched. Was that hers? The collar's last ping came from a rocky bluff. Tom crested the ridge, breath ragged, and found the collar chewed off near fresh cougar tracks. The Ford's headlights swept the trees as night fell. No sign, no sound. Just the wind carrying a truth Tom couldn't face. Nature had won. Tom dreamt of Scout for weeks, her weight on his chest, her purr in his ear. One evening, hauling firewood, he swore he heard her chirp. The Ford's headlights revealed nothing. "Losing it, old man," he muttered. Then, a shadow moved by the tool shed. Tom's pulse spiked. Was that? A pair of eyes flashed in the beam. Too tall for a bobcat. A damn coyote! Tom fired a warning shot, the report echoing like his own loneliness. That night, he drank until the dream stopped. First frost came early. Tom stared at Scout's empty nest under the Ford's tarp, now dusted with ice. Marlene found him there at dawn, holding a frozen deer femur Scout had loved. "She's wild now, Tom. Let her be." Tom snapped the bone in his hands. "I made her that way." The Ford's engine turned over slow in the cold as he drove to town for supplies. Past the "Welcome to Jefferson County" sign, a blur darted across the road. Tawny fur, black-tipped ears. Tom slammed the brakes. The truck fishtailed. By the time he steadied it, the road was empty. Just his imagination? Maybe, but for the first time in months, Tom Harper smiled. The first snowflakes swirled as Tom gunned the Ford's engine toward home, chains rattling on the tires. Another winter alone. Another season of wondering if Scout still roamed these mountains. Then, a flash of movement in the ditch. Tom slammed the brakes. A gaunt, limping figure staggered into his headlights. No, it couldn't be.
The Bobcat's once glossy fur was matted with blood, one ear torn, ribs visible under her coat. But those blue-gold eyes, Tom would know them anywhere. "Scout?" His voice cracked. The cat collapsed in the road. Tom didn't remember jumping from the truck, just the icy burn of her weak pulse under his fingers and the howl of the storm swallowing his curses. Tom carried Scout's limp body inside, her blood soaking his flannel. The Ford sat abandoned, driver's door hanging open, snow piling on the seat. He worked through the night, stitching wounds, forcing broth between her clenched teeth, whispering Vietnam field medic's prayers. Near dawn, Scout's paw twitched. Tom's breath caught. Then, a feeble lick on his wrist. The old vet collapsed into his rocking chair, face in his hands. Outside, the blizzard raged. Inside, a miracle purred weakly from the nest of blankets.
Morning revealed the truth in daylight. Scout's once powerful haunches were ridged with scars. A jagged line across her muzzle spoke of a wire snare. Worst of all, her right front paw was missing 2 toes. Tom's coffee cup shattered on the floor. "Who did this to you, girl?" Scout nuzzled his boot, then limped to the door and growled low in her throat. Through the frosty glass, Tom saw fresh ATV tracks cutting across his pasture. Not game wardens, poachers, and they'd left their mark on his cat. The Ford's engine roared to life before Tom even realized he'd grabbed his keys. Tom was loading his 30-06 when Scout dragged something from under the porch, a bloodied hunting glove. The stench of cheap tobacco and motor oil clung to it. Scout dropped it at his feet, eyes blazing. Then she hobbled to the Ford and leapt into the bed, tail lashing. Tom's stomach dropped. She wasn't just showing him, she was leading him. The glove's cuff bore a stitched name, D. Harlow. Everyone knew Devin Harlow, local meth peeler, bear poacher, and all-around backwoods bastard. Tom peeled out, gravel spraying. Scout balanced on 3 good paws beside him, ears pinned. This wasn't rescue anymore. This was revenge. The Ford bounced down an overgrown logging road, Scout's nose guiding them toward Harlow's trailer. Tom cut the engine a mile out, rifle ready. That's when new sounds cut through the pines, high-pitched mewling. Scout took off like a shot. Tom crashed after her to a hidden den under a fallen oak. There, 3 bobcat kittens tumbled over each other, scrawny but alive. Scout nuzzled them, then looked at Tom with something like pride. The pieces clicked. These were hers, and Harlow had been hunting her babies. Tom's finger curled around the trigger. Some men didn't deserve warnings. The smallest cub, a female with Scout's blue-gold eyes, approached Tom's boot. He knelt, offering a calloused hand. The kitten sniffed, then butted its head against his palm, just like Scout had years ago. Something hot and fierce clawed up Tom's throat. He shrugged off his coat, bundling the cubs inside. Scout watched, purring. The Ford's cab became a furry chaos of squeaks and curious paws batting at the gear shift. As Tom turned the key, headlights swept across the road ahead. Harlow's jacked-up Dodge. The poacher leaned out, a 308 propped on his door. "Well, looky here," he drawled. "Harper and his pet freak show."
Bullets punched through the Ford's grill as Tom floored it in reverse. Scout hissed, shielding the cubs with her body. Tom took a sharp turn, sending Harlow's neck shot wild into the trees. The cubs yowled. Tom's vision tunneled. No, not again. He'd lost too much. His unit in Nam, his wife to cancer, damn near his own soul. But this he could fight. The Ford's headlights died as he killed the engine behind a ridge. Scout met his gaze in the dark. No words needed. They'd finish this together. 3 weeks later, the county paper ran a small headline. Missing poacher's truck found abandoned near state line. No body, no leads, just bloodstains on the driver's seat and claw marks no cougar could have made. At Tom's cabin, life settled into a new rhythm. Scout teaching her cubs to hunt, Tom reinforcing the barn into a proper sanctuary. Some nights, when the moon hung fat and low, 4 shadowy figures would appear at the tree line. Scout would chuff once, all clear, and lead her wild brood inside for a meal and a scratch behind the ears. The Ford's odometer kept tallying miles. But Tom, he was finally home.
Marlene brought casseroles and curious tourists. Tom tolerated neither. But when a kid in a wheelchair showed up begging to see the magic bobcats, Scout marched out and dropped a pine cone in his lap. The boy's laughter echoed through the valley. After that, hand-painted signs appeared at Tom's gate. Harper's Haven, Wildlife Rescue. The Ford's bed became a transport for injured animals, a fox with a snare wound, a bald eagle with a broken wing, and always Scout riding shotgun, her 3-toed paw resting on the dash like a co-pilot's badge. Winter returned, thicker and kinder this time. Tom dozed in his rocker, Scout's weight warm across his legs, her cubs now grown and prowling the ridges. The Ford sat under a tarp, its seat still claw-marked, its engine waiting for the next adventure. Scout lifted her head, licking Tom's gnarled fingers as his breathing deepened. Outside, snow blanketed the pasture where a lost cub had once stumbled into his life. Inside, the fire crackled. No storms tonight, just peace. The 2 male cubs vanished into the wild by spring, but the blue-eyed female, now called Shadow, refused to leave, trailing Tom like his namesake as he repaired fences or drove the Ford to town, her 3-toed paw leaving distinctive prints in the mud beside his boot tracks, a silent testament to the family forged from blood and bullets. A shivering red fox kit appeared at the sanctuary gate one April morning, its tail mangled from a trap. Scout sniffed it, then nudged it toward Tom with her nose, the same way he'd once offered her condensed milk, and the old man's hands trembled as he whispered, "Hell, not another freeloader," even as he reached for the medical kit. At the county fair, a skeptical rancher sneered at Tom's sanctuary brochures until Scout leapt onto the Ford's hood and roared, scattering prize chickens. But instead of anger, Tom just laughed, scratching her ears as he drawled, "She's a bobcat, Hank. You expected a handshake?" The crowd's murmurs shifted from fear to fascination, and by sundown, donations piled into the truck bed. Scout was 14, ancient for a wild bobcat, when she limped into the woods at dawn and didn't return. Tom searched for days, the Ford crawling down every logging road until he found her beneath their old oak, her body curled as if sleeping, muzzle resting on his dog tags. He buried her there with her favorite toy, a chewed-up deer antler, and for the first time in decades, the town saw Tom Harper weep openly. The hand-carved headstone read, "Scout Harper, best damn cat that ever lived." Shadow brought fresh killed rabbits to the grave for weeks, while Tom sat with his back against the oak, sipping whiskey and telling stories to the wind. How Scout had stolen his bacon, faced down a mountain lion, saved his soul, until his voice grew hoarse and the fireflies blinked like distant memories. By the next winter, Shadow had kittens of her own, 2 females with her mother's piercing eyes, and they tumbled over Tom's boots as he fed them. The Ford now a mobile clinic with Harper's Haven painted in fading letters on the door, its engine still reliable as the old man's stubborn heart. A documentary crew came, filming the sanctuary for PBS. Tom gruffly refused to be interviewed until Shadow dragged the microphone toward him by its cord. Letters poured in afterward. Vets with PTSD, widows, lonely kids, all thanking him for proving broken things could still heal. Tom stored them in the Ford's glove box, rereading them on hard nights.
The documentary's closing scene showed never-before-seen footage. Scout as a cub, riding shotgun in the Ford, her paw batting at the radio dial until country music played, while a younger Tom, smiling, actually smiling, reached over to scratch her ears. The frame froze there, the caption reading, "The unlikeliest family, the truest love."
At 82, Tom sat on the porch with Shadow's grandkittens dozing in his lap, watching a new generation of orphans explore the pasture. The Ford's keys hung by the door, ready for the next rescue. His voice, though roughened by age, was clear in the documentary's final voiceover. "Thought I was done caring. Then one stormy night, a half-dead bobcat proved me wrong." The camera panned over the sanctuary at dusk, foxes playing, an eagle soaring, Shadow's lineage prowling the fences, before lingering on the Ford, its hood rusted but headlights still bright, parked beside the oak where Scout slept forever. The screen faded to black. Then, just before the credits, one faint, familiar chirp from the darkness.